Hello and welcome to Thursday's Discover Your Career Weekly Q&A session. So I'm just recovering from strep throat, so I apologize if my voice starts to give out. This is probably going to be one of the times I've talked most this week, so I don't know how my voice will hold up to it. But I'm happy to be here and happy to talk about something that's on most people's minds when they are talking about and thinking about their careers: salary and money, and how to talk about it. How to talk about it during performance reviews, how to ask for a raise, which we will cover at another call. This week, we want to talk about how to handle the money question in an interview. It's a big one. It's a fun one. So just some, admin stuff. Don't forget that I have the Master the Interview workshop next Thursday at the Brant Hills Library, 7 p.m. I'll pop a link to register below. This will definitely be a question we will work on. And I'm hoping we have a small enough group where we can work on things individually. So come out and you really feel you may have a unique situation with this or any other sort of interview concerns that you have, and we can work on that to get it right. The other thing, I want to touch on hiring seasons a bit. So we just finished one of the biggest and busiest hiring seasons of the year, and that's sort of September to, honestly, it's finishing up about now. Definitely it's starting to, now that we're mid-November, it's sort of slowing down to approach the December season, which is probably the slowest month for recruitment. But that means that January is one of the busiest, if not the busiest hiring season of the year, not only for senior level positions, but also for entry level positions. If you are in your fourth year of university or your last year of any sort of post-secondary program, January is when you got to start looking for that job, because that's when a lot of those jobs are posted, and obviously a lot of other positions. So I'm saying all that because if you know that you will be looking, right now is the time to start preparing. Right now is the time to start getting your resume done, getting your cover letter done, thinking about your LinkedIn profile, your social media strategy, thinking about your networking strategy, maybe even to start networking, so that when January comes and the hiring season really sort of jumps into high gear, you are ready. Just hit the ground running and start applying to those amazing jobs. You're not scrambling, trying to get ready. So if you need help with that, obviously I have a ton of resources. So reach out, let me know. We can have a free Discover Your Career coaching call, or you can use one of my free resources. Or if you feel like you need some more assistance, like maybe you just don't have time, you really don't know how to write a resume for these applicant tracking systems and for these sort of savvy recruiters these days, I can. So reach out, let me know. Okay, how to talk about money. So I want to start off with a little aside, and this is mostly for the individuals in Ontario. And I do want to say one thing is HR laws about how a company can market to themselves in terms of the salary bands and what they can ask you in an interview is different depending on the state and province that you live in. So in Ontario, right now, a company has no need to disclose any salary until an offer, and they can ask you anything they want. They can ask you about all of the salaries that you used to make, and this is corporate recruiters or hiring managers and agency recruiters. But that may change. So in Ontario, the Pay Transparency Act is supposed to, and I'll tell you why supposed to come January 2019. And what the Pay Transparency Act is that for all Ontario employers, that they must post the job salary range or salary on every job posting. So this is amazing, especially for women and for new immigrants and new Canadians, to really help sort of, get that wage gap closer. Now, why I say probably and hopefully is that with the new government that came to play this past June, they've already made some changes to some of the HR bills that had been passed by the previous Liberal government, such as Bill 148. They made a lot of changes to that, especially with the minimum wage being frozen at the $14 an hour, whatever it was frozen at. So be cautiously hopeful that it'll come, because it will make the money question so much easier. It won't even be a problem talking about money when you have all the information from the horse's mouth. And a lot of this would still be effective though, because people are very uncomfortable talking about money. It's sort of there's a stigmatized status, icky feeling about talking about that nitty gritty of what you make in a year. I know for me, I'm not as weirded out by it. In recruitment, especially agency recruitment, or at least it used to be, we did a lot of training about talking about money. And I'm used to talking about money with candidates all the time. And we also knew what everybody else in our company made. Like at Tima, we knew down to the cent, essentially, of what people were making every month, every year. So to me, that's just, it's just one of those things, especially because I'm not money motivated. So just something that you talk about. But I know it's kind of awkward, and you want to make sure that you're not underselling yourself or overpricing yourself. So it is trying to find that fine line. So I always recommend with everything is to do your research. So first off is the job posting. So let's back up. You got the interview, which is great. Now you want to prepare for the money question for the specific job with the specific company. So to prepare as you go back to the job posting, did it list a salary range or a salary for you to use as your guide? If so, done, easy peasy. Probably not though, because a lot of places don't. Then you can use things like Glassdoor is my number one place to go. And the reason why is you can use Glassdoor to find specific salaries for specific roles within specific companies, and a lot of time within the city that the posting is, which is life-changing. So that would be the first place to go, because that would make things, again, very simple for you going forward. If they don't have it, Glassdoor does sometimes have the sort of industry, but my favorite site for industry averages is PayScale, and there is an American and a Canadian version. And why I like it is it will show not job specific within an industry, because industries, as we know, pay vastly different. Like pharmaceutical industry pays above market than almost every other industry. So it's good to be able to narrow it down so that you really have the right information. And I also like that it narrows down per location. And I'm going to use the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, as an example. Downtown Toronto jobs pay more than jobs in Burlington and the Halton region, in Oshawa, in the Durham region, than up in Barrie, anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. Okay, so you need to be aware of that yes, you may be applying for the exact same job, but the pay difference will be vast. Okay, so that's one thing to think about with PayScale is the industry, location, things for insights for your salary. So other websites that I know other people use, I just haven't really found I have needed to go to them because I've been happy with Glassdoor and PayScale, Indeed Pay, and LinkedIn Salary Insights. I betcha will eventually become amazing the way LinkedIn is going, but it's such in the early days of it that I find it doesn't have a lot of the right information. But that's definitely one to watch, especially if the Pay Transparency Act in Ontario doesn't go through, but for everyone else where it does matter, it's definitely one to watch as a valuable resource for salary research information. Now, beyond that, I do want you to do your research into yourself, okay? And figuring out your total compensation package at your current or previous position. And by total, I mean take a look at everything. So what is your base salary? What is your bonus? Do you have commission? Do you have profit sharing? Whatever sort of extra? Do you have car allowance? And I know we sort of touched on this in a previous Q&A session, but the full breakdown. Do you have benefits? Do you have pension? So do you have like a defined contribution pension where they do RSP matching of 3% of your salary? Or is it a defined benefit pension, which is hard to find in the private sector? So do the full breakdown of what you made, because that'll help determine what kind of numbers you may tell people if you're going to share previous salary information. But it also will allow you to figure out your bottom line. And I usually actually want people to do this during the introspection phase, not to do it as a reactionary to interviews, but sometimes things happen and you get busy. But you need to come up with your bottom line, especially before you go in for an interview, because I have seen it happen where you get wooed by the said company. Then they lowball you and they say they have no room for negotiation, and you take it. And then like a year later, you're struggling to pay your bills, or you're using up your savings to try and pay your bills. And you're like, what did I do? Why did I make this decision? So to avoid the wooing or getting wooed and getting kind of suckered into accepting a job at too low of a salary, figure out what your bottom line should be. And that takes into account the pay scale, using pay scale research in terms of the market. It takes into account what you need to do to pay your bills. And it takes into account what you feel is the right salary for what you can bring to the table. Okay. Now I want you to take into consideration a few things, location being one of them. So like I said, if you were interviewing for a job in downtown Toronto, maybe that pays $65,000. Maybe in the outskirts it pays $55,000. But you're saving $5,000 plus 2.5 hours every day from that commute, then that $10,000 may mean like nothing to you. So arming yourself with that information by researching what the company is paying through Glassdoor or the industry is paying through PayScale, and the location, what you were making, really allows you just to set yourself up to go in there to talk about money confidently. Okay, so when the money question comes up, so we've talked a lot and we haven't even actually gotten to the money question until right now. That's how much thought goes into it beforehand. So once the interview question finally comes up, how you answer it depends on when it has come up and how much you know. So to me, I do not like it when recruiters ask it right off the front, but before you even had a conversation about what you bring to the table and what they're looking for, because I think that's unfair to everyone involved. And if that is the case, I would deflect. And you deflect by saying something along the lines of, seeing as this is the roles and responsibilities are slightly different from what I was doing in my previous position, I think I would feel more comfortable to disclose a fair salary range after we discuss more details about what the opportunity entails. A deflection of something along those lines. And then maybe, and you can say, should I ask you some questions now? Or would you tell me about that? And then I'd be happy to be open to discussing what I'm looking at near the end of the conversation. I think that's completely reasonable. I would not be off put by that. So I think that's a great way to make the question happen when you are armed with more information so that you know how you want to discuss it. So there's a lot of controversy about, should you just provide a range? Should you provide a number? Should you even talk about what you were making before? So even if the Pay Transparency Act goes through and the company cannot ask you what you were making before, to me, honestly, if you were making $75,000 in your previous job, and you know, based on anything, even based on the job posting, that this job is paying $65,000 to $75,000, then why would you give it that range? Why would you not show them that you're worth the 75 because you are making 75? Even if that 75 is your total take home, like everything. It doesn't matter if that wasn't your base. And you can say something along the lines of, I see that, or through my research, or I noticed on the job posting that this position pays within the range of $65,000 to $75,000. In my previous role as blah at such and such company, my compensation was $75,000, and I would be looking to hopefully maintaining that. Period. End of story. Okay. If it's a role where you think that, if it's a role that's paying less than your range, but you're willing to go less, then you don't have to talk about it. You can even say something like, so if we use that example about an outskirts job that pays $10,000 less, you could say something like, this position does pay a little bit less than what I was making. However, the fact that it is 2-minute drive away or a 10-minute drive away compared to an hour expensive commute weighs heavily in my decision and would have a big impact on the salary that I would expect. So therefore, I would be comfortable with the $65K or whatever that salary would be. Okay. And if, let's talk about the other. So we've just talked about this pays the same. If it pays the same, to me, you would tell them that you were making the same. That way you're showing them that this is what you were making before, therefore, this is the money that you deserve to get. If it pays less than what you were making, you can acknowledge that it's less, but you need to give them a reason why, and it needs to be a tangible reason why you would take less. Okay, and to me, again, they can do the same research as you, so they probably have a good understanding. So by telling them why you're willing to take less, it makes them feel better that even though they know they're paying you less, that you will stay because you have a reason to stay. So let's talk about wanting to make more money than you do right now. Okay, so this is sometimes a tough subject because everyone, who wouldn't want to make some more money? There are a number of factors that you need to think about, okay? One thing is, are you currently being paid under market? If you're currently being paid under market, then again, I would have no problem addressing that in your interview. If you were to go in and say, I understand that the range, or from my research, it looks as though the range for this job is $50,000 to $60,000. I would be happy to secure a salary within that range, and you can end it there. Or you could say, I know what I'm making now is below market, as my company has a tendency to pay below market, which is one of the reasons why I'm looking, is to make my worth. And then you're also kind of giving them a reason why you're looking for the job. And it gives an understanding of your motivation in terms of hello, I deserve what I deserve. So if that is the case, you well deserving of getting a market salary. Now the tough one is I know a lot of people, I've dealt as a recruiter, as a coach, with a lot of people who want to make more money. The problem is they don't really have a reason why they want to make more money. They just view finding a new job as a way to have a significant, and I'm not talking little bumps, I'm talking significant, like 10 to 20% bump on their salary. Why else would they look to leave? So when I was initially trained as a recruiter, when something like this came up, my boss would say that what we should say is, if your current company isn't willing to give you a raise, why should someone else? And while harsh, and while not completely true, and I'll talk about that, it is something to think about. Because if they know what you're making, especially once the Pay Transparency Act is coming through, the competitive analysis that they'll be able to do with their competitors, or even with any other sort of range, is they'll get to know what you are making, is then you need to know why you deserve to make more. And that sort of caveat I threw in there, it is kind of sad to say that the best way to get a raise is to get a new job. The stats have showed that if you stay in a job, your salary does sort of stagnate. And so the best way is to move up. But you need the reasons why again. And honestly, 10 to 20% bump is rare. It is not the norm. 3 to 5%, which is probably what a company should be giving you as a raise anyway, is probably what you should expect as the norm. And having your reasons why, that business plan. And so if you're asking for a raise, if you're asking for more money, and even if they don't know it or they're not telling you that they know it, you need to know why you. What is your differentiating factor? What can you do that pretty much no one else can do? Why are you now not getting the money that you should be getting? And this is some self-reflection. Is it the fact that the company is not giving raises across the board? Because then that's a completely different story. That's more the first. You're not getting paid the market because the whole company is not getting raises. Or is there something in your performance reviews, a theme or a pattern that's been coming up that maybe has been preventing these raises? Those are some things you may need to look at. Is there a problem or a project at this new company you are interviewing with that that only you can solve, or you have solved before, or you know how to solve? So by them paying you, even maybe more than the range, is going to save them money in the long term, because you can do something that'll make their lives easier, make them all look good, make them able to achieve their strategic business goals. So, can't be, all of this to say, you can't be blasé about the money question. Number one, you can't go in and pretend it's not going to happen. Because while it may not happen, it more than likely would. Number two, it may happen with a recruiter that doesn't really like talking about money, or who is uncomfortable as they are about you, as you are uncomfortable. But what if you got someone like me? I was very comfortable talking about money. I would not let it lie. And I would dig to get, I would get the full compensation plan Also, you're making 100K. So was that your base or was that your total take home? Oh, it wasn't your base. So what was your base? So what was your bonus? What was your bonus the last 3 to 5 years? Oh, and do you have a car allowance? So what if you got someone like me, and I know there's a lot of them out there like me, and there's a lot of people like me who have gone corporate and who do this in corporate, then you need to be prepared to talk about it. Because the money question in the interview sets you up to negotiate the salary when it comes time to negotiate it. And you can't get your worth if you're not getting the information that you want across and gathering the information that you need. Okay, so that goes both sides. If they ask you the money question, why don't you ask questions about the money? So the base, I see that the range is 65 to 75. Can you tell me more about your compensation plan? Are there any bonuses on top? If so, what does that look like? 5 to 10%? How is that 5 to 10% determined? Is it based just on my performance? Is it based on the company performance? Is it a mix of the two? And then what I always like to have asked, or information that I would gather from my candidates, what's the average bonus for this position for the last 5 years? Because they can tell you 10%, but what if for the last 5 years it's been 2%? You need to know that information. They have that information, okay? But you need to know that information so that you're arming yourself properly. I'm assuming there's benefits and pension. What does the pension look like? Are there any other perks that I should know about? Like work from home, or is it a bring your own phone plan? Like some of those like nitty gritty things, it really depends, but some of that you may want to save for negotiating and for when the offer comes. But these are sort of the things you need to be thinking about and you need to be comfortable talking about. Okay? Any questions about the money question? Anything? Good business plan? Good points to focus on things? Yikes, Dylan says. Yeah, money isn't always easy, especially if you want to be making more or in a career change when you are looking to sort of make a lateral move. That's a tough one. We can talk about it another time. Or you are fully comfortable taking a big pay cut because you know that's pretty expected. How to navigate that. There's lots of things to be thinking about, but the best way to go in is to be very comfortable and confident and armed with knowledge. But the end, before we go anywhere, but the end of your answer with the money question, especially if it's a job you really want. So you gotta always finish it with a touch of the right attitude. And that is, salary is one of the factors that I'll be taking into consideration for a new position. So for the right opportunity, I'd be happy to or open to discussing or to negotiation. So at the end of your answer to the money question, it's essentially saying that money isn't your only determining factor. Because unless you're in sales, maybe an accountant, there aren't many industries that like it when money is your motivating factor. Because always afraid you're just going to keep leaving for more money. So you want to show that it's just one of the things you'd be keeping in mind and taking into consideration. And number 2 is that willingness and openness to discussing the money. I like using discussing. Negotiating is to like means that you're open to them lowballing you, essentially. Okay? That's a good question, Jennifer. I'll get to that. Negotiation that means that they may give a different, but discussing is completely different. You can still hold firm at 75, but discuss other factors. Okay, so I like that discussing. It's a softer word. I'm all about word choices. Okay, Jennifer has a great question. I was laid off from my last job. How does that differ from when someone is leaving a job? It doesn't really. Okay, the one thing is Most people who are laid off do take a slight hit. It is more challenging to get a raise from your last salary once you've been laid off. And it's more likely that you may take like a 5% hit, which is why when you're laid off, it's even more important for you to know your bottom line, because it is so much easier when you are quote unquote like desperate for a new job to get wooed, and for them to feel that you're desperate and for them to lowball you. Okay, so still being confident in what you're worth. Still, like, I know, Jennifer, you're in California, so I'm not too sure what the laws are in terms of whether or not they can ask you what you were making, but you're always free to discuss it. And so I would simply still discuss your total compensation plan as if you were still working. To me, there's no difference, but just be prepared for maybe that slight decrease, and to fully know your bottom line. Okay. Well, this was a big conversation. My throat lasted pretty good, so I'm happy about that. If you have any further questions, or honestly, instead of a Discover Your Career call, you want a quick call to talk about how to talk about money and just to practice, reach out, let me know. Or come out next Thursday if you can, if you're in the area, to the Brant Hills Library to the Master Your Interview. We will also touch on a lot of the other scary interview questions. Next week, I already have my thing for next week because you got the same new law that we have. Well, that's good. So next week I've already come up with something to talk about. So it's not really a question, but I was sort of inspired by it. How your thoughts, feelings, and actions get in the way of achieving career success. It's a fun one. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk next week. Bye.